So this brings us over now to the thing that Derek sent me. And I thought that this was really, really interesting. This is a graph, guys. Now, I realize it's a lot of numbers and it's hard to see. And oh God, hard to see. But if you, I should probably pull it up. This is a graph that Derek sent to me. All right. This is a lot of numbers, hard to see. I realize it's not going to be able to make a lot of sense to you guys, but bear with me on this one. Okay. Stay with me on this just for a second. Let's see if I can. All right. This is as big as it's going to get. Let me explain to you in general what this is. This is from a website, cgcdata.com or something like that, that Derek sent to me. This right here is all of the universals that CGC has given. Okay. All of the universals. And you can see that it's broken out by era. So you have the books from the 2010 or 2020s. You have books from the 2010s, 2000s, 1990s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, etc. Okay. And you can see the distribution. How many 1930s books are 10s? Well, there's 0. How many 1940s books are 10s? Well, there's 1. How many 2020s books are 10s? There's 2,895. Now, the important thing to point out in this graph is here in the 2020s, you can see that the 2020s, which mind you, we are in the year 2024. So as far as decades are concerned, this is only 4 years compared to the other decades that have 10 years of data. This decade alone already has 11,455 9.9's. That is the most 9.9's compared to any other decade. Now, let's go over here to the other side of the graph. How many submissions have actually occurred for every single decade? Meaning how many books, say in the 1960s, have been submitted to CGC? Well, here you see 1 million. Then you see in the 70s, 1.2 million. Then the 80s, 1.4 million. Then the 90s, 1.1 million. Then the 2000s, 683,000. There's not a lot of keys in the 2000s, guys. Then in the 2010s, 1.3 million UF4s. All of them are basically UF4. And then 2020s here, you have 1.16 million. Swag, I'm confused. Explain to me what you mean by that. In the 4 years that we exist in this decade right now, in the 2020s, there are already as many submissions to CGC for books that came out in these last 4 years than there are for every other single decade of books that have gone to CGC. Do you guys follow? Does that make sense? There are more books, as many books in these 4 years that came out the last 4 years that have been submitted to CGC than the other decades from the entire time that they've been submitting to CGC. So if we are to assume that in the next 6 years, that number will double, that there will be twice as many books that came from this decade alone that go to CGC than the other decades. Well, what does that mean? That means where the money is are modern comic books going to CGC. They make way more money slabbing modern comic books than they would ever dream to make slabbing bronze books or copper or silver or golden age books. Now, the price to submit is a little bit cheaper for modern. So maybe the golden age books that have a 3 or 4%, maybe there's a bigger pie right there. But I feel like it's all those microtransactions. If microtransactions in video games taught me anything, those are the ways you really, really make money. It's all those $1 little, give me like 5 gems for my Clash of Clans thing. You know, that stuff adds up. So where are we going with this? What is the point with all this? Comic books in the 2020s, like they have to start to open it up to allow these books to get 9.9's and 10's, because it begs the question. These books are literally coming off of the press, straight from Diamond Distribution, straight to CGC, maybe through some retailer who like is straight sending them in via like 9.9 or 9.8 pre-sales, right, to like their customers. And they're going straight to CGC. So not even sitting on the shelf, like straight from manufacturer, straight to CGC's slab factory. So like, where are the 9.9's? You know what I mean? Where are the 10s? Like they're straight from the press. So this is something that has been knocking on CGC's door as we are now in this, well, we call it modern. We really need a new name, guys, for this. Okay, we really need a new name for like the 2000s. Can we just call that like, what do we call it? Like the whatever metal age? Is it just a metal age? The foil age? You know, can we call it the MCU age? You know, whatever it is, whatever that age. And now we're in this 2020s age where they're getting all this new business. And it stands to reason. Like, of course, they have to have 9.9's and 10's. This is like the biggest new revenue stream for them. I mean, they're going to get so many submissions. They get more submissions now than every other single era. So that explains why they eventually have to consider doing 9.9 pre-screens. There are 9.9's and 10's. There are, but they just haven't given them. So now they have to. You know what I mean? Let me check in with you guys here. Chat's going off. Thank you guys. I hope this has been interesting so far. You know, I'm kind of just going on a little bit of a rambly rant here. Bronzeville says, the question for CGC, what is the probability that a Batman Adventures 12 gets a 9.9? There are 1,232 9.8's and 0 9.9's. See, that's the problem. That's the thing, is that there are 9.9's. It's just the company has decided probably just not to give them. And maybe that's okay. You know what I mean? Maybe that's okay. It's like, I bet if CGC could like wave a magic wand and go back in time and start everything from the beginning of their census and everything like that, they would have said, you know what? Let's just make 10's 9.8's. You know what I mean? Like if a book is perfect, it's perfect. Or maybe they would have said like, hey, let's just like, instead of 9.8, let's just do 9.9's. You know what I mean? And on the rare exception, it's like a 10. They probably would do that. But I think we are where we are, right? We are where we are. And therefore, there's no 9.9's, excuse me, of Batman Adventures 12. And frankly, even though it's not technically true, they probably should just keep it that way. You know what I mean? They probably should just keep it that way. Because this is what the community has kind of decided. And this is how everything has kind of operated so far. So it makes sense to just let it be. And what they do about modern books, I think that they just take a little bit of the heat. You know what I mean? Like, you want to send in a new modern book and give it a 10, just give it a 10. And everyone's going to be like, well, how could there be 10? It's like, you know what? It's a new modern book. Printing has gotten really, really good, guys, in the last 4 years. And so now we're going to give that. And I think that that'll be okay. It's not perfect, right? It's messy. But this is the hobby we've inherited. And therefore, it's probably the hobby that kind of just needs to be what it is. Would a CGC 9.9 pre-screen tank the market? No, it wouldn't tank the market. Would it cause massive volatility amongst particular comic books? Absolutely. Absolutely. If there are books out there that are 9.9's, those ones for sure. You add any single book you add to the census for those books, obviously affects the fair market value. And then it gets exponentially so, right? If you have people that can crack a press. That said, will this eventually be a thing? Will 9.9 pre-screens be a thing? Will 10.0 pre-screens be a thing? People have said that they've been talking about this for decades, that this isn't really that new as a conversation thing, and that it's just something that has been thrown around. And yeah, that's very true. It's just something right now that's been thrown around. It's not actually a thing. We're just talking about it because we're talking about it. And maybe CGC watches this and they read the comments and they see your guys' voice and they or read your guys' thoughts. And, and then they decide what it is that they want to do about it. But based on what we looked at with some of those graphs and stuff that Derek sent, I mean, this is clearly their biggest growth potential is in modern comic books, modern comic slabbing. And so they're going to give more 9.9's and 10's for them. And it makes sense that they should do 9.9 and 10 pre-screens. I mean, maybe that's what it'll be. Maybe it'll be ultra modern only 9.9, 10 pre-screen. How would you guys feel about that? Only ultra modern, meaning 2020 and newer. That's the only one that has a pre-screen. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe that makes sense.